Okay, so we have another question here from Sam, and I think he was reacting to a blog post of yours, Greg, and I'll make the plug. Go to blog.kainexus.com if you want to read blog posts that we all write. But Sam asked, I was wondering if you, Dr. Jacobson, or Mark could expand on your comment, quote, healthcare is a decade or more behind other high-risk industries in its attention to ensuring basic safety. Some say medical errors are now the third leading cause of death in the United States. Some estimate it as roughly 250,000 people per year. Has any other high-risk industry ever had a fraction of that many deaths? I understand that this number is an estimate, but it seems like healthcare maybe is more behind than a decade. Could you elaborate on your thoughts? So, Greg.
This is a really complicated question. So I think in order to kind of simplify it down to a short, concise answer, we're going to have to just make some assumptions and just kind of go with me a little bit. Whether the number is 250,000 or whether the number is 5,000, I kind of don't care. I remember being an intern and sitting in a chest pain class and or a lecture about chest pain and being asked the question, so Greg, what is the acceptable miss percentage for heart attacks for an ER doctor? You know, and you kind of think about it. Okay, well, it's really hard to tell if someone's having a heart attack. Sometimes the EKGs are normal. Sometimes all the blood work is normal, but they're still having a heart attack. The right answer, and luckily I said the right answer, is zero. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, that zero. Now, we understand that that's probably not going to happen. In your career, you're going to miss these things. So, you know, whether it's 250,000 people or whether it's 10,000 people, I don't really care about the answer. What I care about is the number that we should be striving for is zero. Whether we can get there or not is a different kind of topic. Mm-hmm. Number two, I don't think you can really kind of make it a complete apples to apples. You know, we're a little bit apples to oranges, right? Because yes, you know, nuclear power obviously isn't killing 250,000 people a year. Yes, aviation is not killing 250,000 people a year. I don't think you can say, okay, well, so the numbers in healthcare, because everyone is engaging in healthcare, right? And people do die as part of the life process, right? So it's inevitable that there's going to be some kind of healthcare going on, and a person's going to die, and whether there was a direct relationship or not, we can. That's why I said I don't want to care about the numbers. But what I do think is whether we're a decade behind, whether we're 2 decades behind, we're behind, and we should recognize that we're behind, and we should start doing things that other industries have figured out. I mean, I was first introduced to kind of aviation, high reliability organization type behaviors, which directly come out of aviation and nuclear. I was first introduced to that in 2001, 2002 at Vanderbilt. They were, I think, very early in that process.
The original Institute of Medicine report about medical errors and harm and death came out in 1999.
Right.
Wow.
So I don't 100% know. Maybe Mark, you know about this. I know this is not necessarily lean, but we do feel that these behaviors and these practices are extremely synergistic, and organizations should be doing all of these things. I don't know exactly how long, you know, aviation had been practicing those, but certainly in the 70s, planes were dropping out of the sky at pretty regular frequency, and they were like basically recognizing, hey, if we really want, I mean, it was probably a business decision as much as anything, right? If we really want for people that this is the main way people are going to get around, we're going to have to get these planes to stop dropping out of the sky, right?
Right. Planes were colliding, hundreds of people being killed, and it was coming down to things like human error, hierarchies in the cockpit of the second officer not speaking up to the captain. So yeah, there were lessons learned there, and you know, to your point, Greg, we can set the goal of zero, but yet at the same time realize humans are not perfect. And I think that the overlap between the patient safety movement and the lean movement would say, you know, A, people aren't perfect, don't expect them to be superhuman, recognize the human factors and the risk of when people get fatigued, people forget things, people aren't communicating clearly, and trying to build better systems instead of saying, hey, don't make mistakes.
Exactly. And recognizing that we have a problem, whether that number is, the number isn't 300, the number is certainly in the thousands, if not tens of thousands, and maybe even in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
So,
and these are all estimates with these numbers, whether it was 44,000 or 400,000 or 100,000. There's two things that really interest me about healthcare. One is there's a lack of transparency, a lack of reporting, and that's for a number of reasons. Fear of lawsuits, reputation, other issues. Aviation has non-punitive mandatory reporting systems, and many have advocated for that in healthcare. But healthcare sort of plays both sides of the card. They don't report, so there's not good data. Then when people do estimates, they poo-poo the estimates. And so, well, you don't know, because, well, come on. You can resolve the estimate problem if there were more transparency.
Right.
And I think the other thing that's interesting is if you look at the auto industry, Toyota had problems a few years ago. They were estimated to have killed maybe 13 people in the U.S. General Motors had ignition switch problems. They were estimated to kill maybe 35 people. And those CEOs got hauled in front of Congress, and whether getting questioned or lectured by committees and televised hearings really does anything to improve or not. I find it interesting that healthcare, that issue doesn't get the same level of attention, regardless of whether the number is 40 or 400 or 400,000.
Right. And it's when an airplane crashes, everyone knows. Mm-hmm. And let's be honest.
There's no covering that up.
Right. There's no covering that up. And when a medical error occurs, sometimes not even all the people on the team that is taking care of the patient is aware that that happened, let alone the system in total, or the family, or they were kind of already sick already, and they already had a disease that had a 25% mortality. So yeah, we kind of messed up on the dosage, but did it really cause? And so what it's going to take is an environment where people are expected to report, and when they do report, I'm using this word at the fear of it sounding wrong, but it should be celebrated. They shouldn't be scorned, and they shouldn't be punished. They need to feel very safe saying, hey, made this mistake, made this error, let's look at this. The chances are it's going to be the Swiss cheese model. It wasn't just one person, right? And then people, kind of gather around that in a way that makes people, and I get it, it's going to sound weird, but makes people feel good about uncovering and solving these things.
Well, and I think the issue of, if you think about aviation, there's no hiding a plane crash. There would be hiding of a near miss, a near collision, a near mishap. And that non-punitive reporting system pretty much requires people to report the near miss, so problem solving can occur, learning can occur, future prevention can occur. And I think that's a huge opportunity in healthcare. There are ratios of, for every instance of harm, there are 8 to 10 near misses. And we need to catch things when it's at the level of unsafe conditions or near misses before it escalates to harm or death.
And Mark, you may know about this more, but my understanding of that rule is if a pilot or a team member in aviation doesn't report it in a certain period of time, then they're liable for it. But if they report it, they're okay. But there's some kind of impression that as long as you're going through this system, you are 100% protected. When you veer away from the system is when you can get in trouble. Yeah. So they're really incentivizing to talk about these things, and they can find patterns and start looking at if things can really be systemed out, can be processed out of errors, can be error-proofed.
Yeah,